name's Christina and you're watching Proud Book Lion. And I've completed my Goodreads goal. Like, I read 40 books. I'm very surprised and happy and kind of confused. But yeah, since we last spoke, I've read 10 books. Or actually 11. So let's talk about them. First off, I finished Fallen Women by Eva F. Dahlgren, which is about, well, how women were looked upon in Sweden during the 19th century, towards the end of the 19th century. The women that weren't up to par, like for example the ones that were hookers or homeless, etc. They were put into this prison and we get to follow a few girls from this prison. It's a pretty okay book. It was quite boring sometimes. I had issues with how it was written, but I did really grow to like some of the characters in this book. So I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, almost like 2.5 stars. It wasn't great, it wasn't the best, but it was okay. Next up, I read The Unexpected Everything by Morgan Matson, and I actually read this for the summer biannual bibliothon because it was the group club book or whatever. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a really sweet contemporary, and yeah, if you don't know what it's about a girl named Andy, and she has her summer all planned out, but that goes to waste when her dad, who's a politician, gets into, well, not in such a good place. His reputation gets destroyed, and Andy is left without, like, a summer plan, so she has to figure something out to do during the summer. It's a classic Morgan Matson summer read. It was focused on friendship, which I enjoy, and yeah, it was just a sweet and nice and summery book. It wasn't like a very deep book, it wasn't the best book, but it was enjoyable, and I gave it 4 or 5 stars. It's the perfect summer read, even though the summer's over. But you know, next year, if you want to get into a summery mood, this is the book for you. After that, I read Narnia, actually, The Witch and the Lion, which is the second book, to be completely honest, I think. I've never read the Narnia books or Narnia Chronicles before, so yeah, it was nice reading them, or this one. I only read this one, finally, because yeah, you had to read something with a mythical creature, or your favorite, like, non-actual creature, or whatever, for the biannual bibliothon. So I read this one. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 or 5 stars, and I really just appreciated it a lot more, I guess, reading it than watching the movies. And because I watched the movies previously, this book like gave me some nostalgia, and it was just a really quick, nice read. And I think everybody should have read the Chronicles of Narnia, even though I haven't even read them all, but at least this one. Like, come on, it's really short and it's sweet. After that, I read More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera, also for the summer biannual bibliothon. So yeah, this was Emma's book. You had to choose one of the books recommended to you by one of the hosts, and I chose More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera. And this book is about Aaron, and yeah, his life pretty much, and I don't know, it's kind of about Aaron and him finding himself and happiness and just figuring out stuff and life and what the purpose of life and happiness and memory and just living is, kind of. It's a finding yourself story, I guess. It has LGBT representation, which I really, really enjoyed. And I just love this book so much. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And if you haven't read it yet, you definitely need to read it. It's an awesome, diverse read, and I absolutely loved it. It's not your typical characters, and it's not the typical, like, environment for a contemporary novel. And I just absolutely loved it so much, and I think everybody should read this book ASAP. After that, also for some biannual bibliothon, I read It's About You by Sandra Beyer. And this is a Swedish book. I don't really know if that's the translation. And this is about a girl and she's obsessed with this one boy. And we kind of get to follow this girl and her obsession with this boy and how they get together. Yeah, it was a very fun read just because the chapters were super short, so I literally flew through this book. It went so quickly. I didn't really enjoy the story though. I thought the girl was annoying sometimes, and I thought she should have focused more on herself, and I thought she was very obsessed with this guy. And yeah, I didn't really like the story, but I flew through it and it was a totally okay book, so I gave it 3 stars. After that, also for the Summer Biennial Bibliothon, which this was my last book for the Summer Biennial Bibliothon, I completed all the challenges and I also read a comic, but I'm not showing you guys the comic that I read because I'm not really counting it as a book, because I read all of those comics previously, and yeah, they're like a children's comic. It's hard to explain. It's kind of like magazines for children that are comics. Yeah, let's not talk about that. But if you count that, I completed all of the challenges and I read 7 books that week. And if you do not count it, like at all, we're not going to count it. I read 6 books that week, so like I'm pretty proud of that amount of books. So this was the last book I read for the Summer Biennial Bibliothon, and it's called They Came from the North, and it's by Jackie French. And this was a very cool book. It's about Vikings, and these Vikings take this girl hostage. This girl and her dog. You cannot forget about Snarf, which is her dog, and we get to follow them to Greenland, and we get to follow them to Iceland, and we get to follow them to America. And I really, really enjoyed this book. I wasn't expecting to at all, but it was such a fantastical and insightful read, and you learned a lot. And yeah, I was really happily surprised with this book. I was afraid it was going to be kind of boring, which it was sometimes, but overall it was a really good book and I'm really happy I read it. I gave it 4 or 5 stars. So if you're interested in like Icelandic mythology and their stories, this is definitely a book for you because it's inspired by those. After that, I read the like biggest book ever. Look at it, it's huge. The only thing I like is that it's not Bible-thin pages, so it's actually like as huge as it looks. Oh, I'm just having a rage towards Bible-thin pages at the moment. Don't ask me why. Probably because Christine brought it up in one of her videos, like the things she hates. Yeah, but this is called This Is Everything by Aidan Chambers, and it's about Cordelia and her life. Pretty much, she loves to write poems and kind of like journal. So this is like her journals throughout her life, and it starts when she's like, I don't know, 13 or something. It kind of starts when she meets Will, and Will is present pretty much throughout the whole book, and it was just an amazing read. It's written in a lot of different formats, and there's a lot of poetry like compiled together with her journaling, with random bursts of text and her thoughts, like her ideas and just her opinions of things. And yeah, it was a really good book. I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did. I gave it 4 or 5 stars. It's a big chunky book. It took me like 3 weeks, 2 weeks to read, but in the end I really enjoyed it. After that, I read And I Darken by Kirsten White, and this was the Explosion book for July, I think. I don't know, it was the Explosion book, and that's why I originally bought it, but I also was very intrigued because this book is kind of like a historical retelling of Vlad the Impaler if Vlad the Impaler was a girl. So the girl in the book is named Lada, and she kicks ass, and her little brother They are the heirs of Valacha or Valatia. I cannot pronounce these things, but she's pretty much thrown out of Valacha with Radu, her brother, and they are forced to create lives on their own, kind of. But luckily they meet Mehmed, and it's just a crazy political, historical novel that's amazing. I just love it so much. There's a lot of feelings, political intrigue, and there's LGBT representation, and there's diversity, and this takes place in the Ottoman Empire, so there's totally new geographical places, at least for me, to read about. And yeah, it's so interesting and you learn a lot, and I really appreciate the fact that Lada is a girl that kicks ass and she doesn't bow down to anybody. She is the dragon. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 or 5 stars, and I think you guys should read it if you haven't. If you like historical fiction, at least. After that, I read Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, parts 1 and 2, by J.K. Rowling and Tiffany and Jack Thorne. Or, like, do you say only Jack Thorne because it's his play? I don't know. I read Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and I kind of enjoyed it a lot. I kind of had a lot of issues. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was a very enjoyable read. I read it in, like, an afternoon / evening when I finally received it, and I loved some parts. I hated / very much disliked other parts. If you don't know what it's about, it's kind of like the continuation of Harry Potter, but here we get to follow his son named Albus and his best friend named Scorpius. And Scorpius is the sweetest child ever, and he definitely made this novel or play or whatever, play script a lot better. So thank you for Scorpius at least. But yeah, it was a pretty good book and I did enjoy it. And if you've read Harry Potter and you haven't read this play yet, you definitely should do that. But keep them separated. Like, don't let your feelings or opinions about this book hurt Harry Potter. Like, try to keep them as separate as possible. Then you'll enjoy it more. After that, I read a novel by Joyce Carol Oates, and I think if I translate this correctly, the title is Wild Green Eyes. And this, my friends, was a very eye-opening book. I wasn't expecting a lot from it, but it had short chapters, which I enjoyed. I read it super quickly. It was the only book I brought for my trip with my best friend Linnea and her family to Poland, and we were only there for 3 days, but I finished the book in that amount of time. So yeah, it was a really good short book, but it's about Frankie and her family, and there's a thing, or there had always been a thing between her parents. She knows what her dad is doing towards her mom, but she also knows why her dad, like, is becoming provoked by her mother. There's a lot of issues between her parents and she's aware of it, but something happens and we kind of get to see how the family starts to disintegrate and how loyalty and what you should do and who you should believe and who you should support. Yeah, it's a lot of morally hard decisions and a lot of feelings and problematics around family and how they are kept together, kind of. I really enjoyed it and it was very good, and I thought it touched on all of these subjects like violence and family and about not speaking up and about speaking up very beautifully. And the book was very deep and insightful, and yeah, it was a great book, and I gave it 4 or 5 stars because I did feel that it was directed towards a younger audience, but it was a really, really good book. Lastly, I read What Your Eyes See by Christina Walden. This is a Swedish book. It's about two girls, pretty much. One girl named Tess, and she gets abused by another schoolmate named Bea, but we actually mainly focus on Molly, and she witnesses this event where Bea kicks Tess, and Tess gets like hurt a lot, like she gets immobilized, not completely, but she does end up in the hospital and she's traumatized. And Molly is faced with the question if she's going to tell the police what she saw or not. And it's kind of about group pressure and doing the right thing. It's another moral book, I would say, like with Wild Green Eyes, but this is more focused on like the moral and the ethics, not like the characters, because the characters didn't really feel deep or that believable. And yeah, it's a really short book. I enjoyed it alright. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it. I thought that group pressure was shown very nicely in this book, but that's pretty much it. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I wouldn't like say don't read it, but I'm not really recommending it. So yeah, those were all the books that I read so far, which means I completed my Goodreads goal of 40 books, which I'm very happy about. And that probably means that I might take all of December and read Harry Potter. Is that bad? Maybe I shouldn't do that. We'll see what I do. And yeah, I hope that I'll read more books, but now I won't focus on a number anymore. So yeah, tell me how many books you read so far this year. I hope that you guys will complete your Goodreads goals as well as having a lovely time reading. You guys are awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching. Your support means the world to me. Have a great day / night / whatever pod is for you guys. Bye! But I did really grow. But I summer biannually